So after the atrocity that was Devil May Cry 2, Capcom gave Hideki Itsuno, the guy that came on after the other director left, a chance to make Devil May Cry 3, and I'm glad they did because it gave the series a sort of resurgence going forward with the rest of the franchise, except the reboot in my opinion. I just like to kind of forget that game existed, as I said before in Devil May Cry 1, but that's for another day. Now, without further ado, let's get this show on the road with this gem, because this was the game that really made me come to appreciate the series in a grander light. This is Devil May Cry 3.
You've heard of it, haven't you? The Legend of Sparta? When I was young, my father would tell me stories about it. Long ago, in ancient times, a demon rebelled against his own kind for the sake of the human race. With his sword, he shut the portal to the demonic realm and sealed the evil entities off from our human world. But since he was a demon himself, his power was also trapped on the other side. I never believed it. I thought it was just a child's fairy tale. But I discovered that this so-called legend wasn't a myth at all. Sparta existed. How do I know? Well, I met the sons of Sparta. Both of them. Though the same blood of their father flowed through their veins, the two battled each other fiercely like arch-enemies. It seemed as if they derived some sort of twisted pleasure from this brotherly fighting. But in the end, only one was left standing.
So the first thing I want to go over was what was going on in the development side of this game. So like I stated in the video a couple minutes ago, due to the mixed reception that was the travesty of Devil May Cry 2, Capcom pretty much wanted to forget the damn game even exists and go back to the roots of where they started. What I mean by this is that they were trying to go back and look into Devil May Cry 1 and see what made that game a masterpiece for its time. So in this regard, Capcom looked at what made Devil May Cry 1 so loved, and for this point, they focused Devil May Cry 3 to go in this direction. And what this direction consisted of being the gameplay elements, how the game was laid out in the environment, so to speak, and the engine they were using. Even though most of the things were heavily inspired by Devil May Cry 1, they also grabbed some mechanics from Devil May Cry 2 as well. Now this would include weapon swapping in mid-battle and being able to use more than one item from each category. Furthermore, they added a quote-unquote moving camera. Now I say that with air quotes because it is movable from left to right in certain areas throughout the game, but it's not entirely a free camera like something we see in Devil May Cry 5 later on. I would also like to point out that the original version that we got here in North America and Europe was a lot harder than the one that they got in Japan when it was released. I feel like they did this in other areas because of yet again how piss easy Devil May Cry 2 was, and they wanted to go back to how challenging how the first one was. And so that Japanese version, to my knowledge, was released a year later worldwide under Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition. This may not be right, I'm not too sure, I couldn't find any information on it, but just let me know in the comments if you guys figure out anything about that. Another interesting tidbit was that the guy who designed Dante and Virgil's Devil Triggers is a guy from Atlas. His name was Kazuma Koneko, who did work for other series such as Zone of the Enders, The Second Runner, Shin Megami Tensei 3, Nocturne, and Persona. The whole Capcom team was amazed by how good the designs looked And I have to agree, they do look pretty sweet in all regards, especially looking at the art you can look at in the HD collections and stuff like that, so that's pretty sweet. And pretty much the very last thing I wanted to mention is that the whole theme of this game is family conflict with the main two brothers, Dante and Virgil, which leads into my next topic. Let's go over the story. So Devil May Cry 3 is a prequel to Devil May Cry 1 and 2. Pretty much an origin story for Dante. With that being said, the story starts off with Dante being at his shop he has yet to name, which if you played Devil May Cry 1, you already know the name. We then see a mysterious figure, a man named Arkham. He's pretty much a messenger that has come to tell Dante that his brother Virgil has an invitation for him in the style of a shit ton of demons attacking him in a badass scene.
This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
So after Dante defeats these demons, a big tower comes up from out of the ground. Knowing that this is his brother on top of this tower, he accepts this challenge Virgil has put upon him. He goes through the tower and fights demons throughout. Hell, some become weapons, but we'll get to that later. After Dante defeats the first demon, Cerberus, we get introduced to a new character. Her name is Mary, or as everyone knows her at this point if you played the rest of the series, Lady. She isn't taking any bullshit as she straight up attacks Dante and leaves to continue her mission, as we learn later on that she's trying to get revenge on her father because he killed her mother. And since Arkham is working with Virgil, she's going to the same destination pretty much that Dante is going. And the stars must align because Virgil and Arkham need the amulet Dante wears given by his mother. His amulet and Virgil's amulet are the keys to unlocking the underworld into the world. So going through the tower and fighting enemies and bosses, Dante finally reaches the top where he finally encounters his brother, Virgil. So then they fight, and just when we think Dante gets the upper hand on Virgil, Virgil then stabs him with his sword and steals the amulet. Then as Dante tries to get up, Virgil stabs him again, but with Dante's own sword, Rebellion. But in doing this, Virgil made a mistake as Dante's blood released a seal in the sword that would then, for the rest of the game, make him have devil powers. He then sets off to go after Virgil and Arkham, but then he gets swallowed whole by that flying well we saw earlier in the game. After he gets out of the well, Dante goes through the tower to fight more demons until he finds Virgil for the second time, as he cannot figure out why the seal isn't broken yet since he cut his blood, and he has both his and Dante's amulet. They of course fight again until they are interrupted by Mary and then the demon Jester that Dante came across after he encountered Mary. Jester then unveils himself to be Arkham, who has tricked all of them to unlock the seal. You see, not only did they need Spartan blood from Dante Dante and Virgil and the amulets from them, they also needed blood from a human woman, and that's where Mary/Lady comes into play. So then Arkham does all that and needs one more thing before completing his plan, and that is obtaining Sparta's sword, the Force Edge, so he can rule Earth with demons running rampant. With that being said, Arkham gets carried up to the tower where he ascends into the sky to the demon world, and Virgil just disappears in the chaos that ensues. Dante once again goes back up to the tower until eventually he gets into a confrontation with Mary/Lady and proceeds to fight her. After the fight, Dante says he'll put a stop to this, and Lady gives Dante her rocket launcher. After this, Dante finally reaches the top of the tower to go through the demon world. He goes through and fights a bunch of demons and chest demons until he catches up with Arkham for a final time. He is, at this point, taking on the appearance as Dante and Virgil's father, Sparta. However, Arkham can't handle the power of Sparta, so then he turns into a blob of shit. By the way, fuck this fight, I hate it. Dante keeps fighting the bastard, but to no avail. That's when his brother Virgil, although it looks like he's going to fight Dante as well at first, but no, actually, he helps Dante beat Arkham because neither one of them want that bastard wielding their father's power. So then, both Virgil and Dante beat Arkham in the most badass way possible with one of my favorite lines in gaming ever.
I'll try it your way for once. Remember what we used to say?
Jackpot.
Not very classy for someone's dying words.
So after the final blow was dealt to Arkham, both Dante and Virgil's amulet appears again alongside with their father's sword, the Force Edge. All three items fall through the portal and both of them go through to grab it, but since Virgil is a greedy ass, he wants all the power and three items to himself. So then they have one final fight to see who gets the Force Edge. Luckily, Dante prevails and Virgil falls into the deep depths of hell. Even though Dante tries to save Virgil, he refuses to help like an edgelord. After this, Dante returns to the human world where he finds Lady outside of the tower. They form a friendship where they will become demon hunters, and Dante ends up naming his shop Devil May Cry, and all is well for the two of them. However, one last thing shows Virgil in hell again charging at his father's greatest enemy, Mundus, which if you don't know, that's the main bad guy of Devil May Cry 1. And pretty much ends there with that leading up to the very first game. And yeah, that's pretty much a rundown of the game's story, and I find it to be very enjoyable prequel to the first game. Like I stated in the video Devil May Cry 1 I did a couple years back, the story is nothing revolutionary or game changing, but it does get the job done. We all know Dante, goofy ass character, but has a good heart. Supporting cast is nothing but immaculate, especially Virgil. Plus, this was a mega upgrade compared to Devil May Cry 2, where it wasn't just interesting in the slightest. I would have rather watched paint dry than listen to that garbage again. So they brought back the awesomeness of the Devil May Cry full force with this game. The voice acting has that cheesy goodness that will live on for me. Alright, here we go, boys. The bread and butter of the Devil May Cry series, the gameplay. Now to start off, the structure of the game is laid out the same way as Devil May Cry 1 and 2, where you'll be going through specific missions, or levels if you want to be specific, where the player will be fighting enemies, jumping on platforms, and solving puzzles. You know, the typical DMC stuff we've come to love. The next thing to mention is the ranking system. Now they changed it somewhat, but not much. It's the same as Devil May Cry 1 and 2, but 2 more ranks above S. This time we got Dope for D, Crazy for C, Blast for B, A for Alright, Sweet for S, Showtime for SS, and finally Stylish for SSS rank. This pretty much would be the staple of the ranking system going forward in the series. Be careful though, if you take any damage at all while getting the rank up, it'll drop your rating. Also, if it's crazy ranking or below you're at, then the rank will completely disappear and you'll have to start over from scratch. Also, another staple that's back in the game is Double Trigger mode. It pretty much does the same thing as the last 2 Devil May Crys, where it alters how Dante looks, increase how much damage he does, and how much defense he has. And HP gradually goes up as long as you have the gauge to do so. Unlike Devil May Cry 1 and 2, where Double Trigger becomes available in the first and second mission, this game does not see Dante awaken it until 1/3 of the game, or, mission 7 to be specific. Another thing to mention is that this time around we got multiple weapons, even more so now than the last 2 games. First thing to go over is the guns you get in the game. Of course you got the classics like Ebony and Ivory, the classic sawed-off shotgun, Artemis, which is pretty much a nerfed Nightmare beta from Devil May Cry 1 if you remember that, or played that game. The Spiral, which is my favorite gun because you can cancel the end lag on it by switching weapons very fast, and I think that's pretty fun to do. And finally, you have Lady's rocket launcher, the Kalina On. I like all the guns in the game because they give you a variety of how you can approach combat and whatnot, which leads to the melee weapons. The melee weapons are Rebellion, Dante's sword, Cerberus, which are nunchucks that feel so amazing to use, one of my favorite weapons to use in this game, by the way. Agni and Rudra, dual blades that talk, and a lot of people's favorite, which I can't blame them. Beowulf, think of a freak from Devil May Cry 1, and side note, fuck this fight, I hate it. And Navon, hot guitar lady. Then added later to the special edition was Virgil with his own kit of weapons. He had his katana everyone loves, the Yamato. Beowulf as well with his own moveset implemented to play differently from Dante's version that he gets. And the last weapon is 2 weapons he uses. This is the Yamato again, but with his father's weapon, the Force Edge. All these cool looking weapons, and I will say this, even though Devil May Cry 2 is a dumpster fire beyond repair, it added a concept that I loved and they kept until the latest entry. And what that is being able to switch weapons on the fly. Granted, the max is 4 for both sides with the guns and the melee weapons, but it's still a very good system. One of my main issues with Devil May Cry 1 was having to go to the inventory menu every time if you wanted to use a different weapon. Kind of like how the old classic Resident Evils are, but in those games it made sense. This hack and slash game where you're constantly in a fight, it just ruined the momentum of the fight. And like I said before, that's not the case in Devil May Cry 3. Being able to switch between 2 weapons is such a godsend for the series. Makes the combat flow so much better overall. The next thing that was changed drastically was style switching, for there was 6 different styles you could get throughout the game. The first one we're going to look at is Trickster. This is by far my favorite one for Dante in the game and even beyond in the later games. Trickster pretty much gives you the ability to dodge attacks by pressing circle or B or whatever you're on, and it's very helpful to me because I suck at these games. The next style is Swordmaster, which gives you an extra move with each melee weapon. The next one is Gunslinger. Gunslinger is the same as Swordmaster, but instead, obviously, it gives you an extra movement ability with all the weapons. The fourth style, and probably the most technical to land, is Royal Guard. This gives you the power to block and parry attacks, and if you do parry an attack rather than blocking it, it will do a ass ton of damage. Next one is Quicksilver. This is my least favorite out of all of them. It pretty much drops down a big orb that slows down every enemy in the area. It could be good for some instances, but I never tend to use it going through this game ever. Next we got Doppelganger, which makes you use Shadow Clone Jutsu, and Dante pretty much gets another copy of himself. And finally, Virgil has his own style too, and only just one style, and it's called Dark Slayer, which it's just almost identical to Dante's Trickster, but he dodges vertically rather than horizontally like Dante does. My favorite style is definitely Trickster because I like being able to have more movement options in my style of gameplay. However, I do like Swordmaster a lot as well because it's just rad to get an extra melee move. The next thing I want to go over that I mentioned briefly is the Special Edition, because there was a lot of quality of life changes in this version of the game towards the combat in general. As stated before, Virgil becomes a playable character in all of his glory. Did not know this at all, but this was when Bloody Palace, or Survival Mode, was reintroduced into the series from Devil May Cry 2, and it's a million times better because it's Devil May Cry 3 over 2, and anything beats 2. Once again, it goes up to 9,999 levels, where you could either go up 1 level, 10 levels, or 100 levels each time you beat the whole arena, getting harder the further you progress. They added a couple modes as well. Turbo mode increased the game speed by a pretty good bit, which was about 20%, and the other mode was called Gold mode, where it just gives you a continue without using orbs. That's pretty much the only difference in that. I also didn't know this, but what was cool when they released the game again for the Nintendo Switch, you were able to switch styles on the fly like you can in Devil May Cry 4 and 5. I have never played this port of the game, but this alone makes me want to try it 100%. Also, they added some kind of co-op mode as well, where you can play as Dante and Virgil in the Bloody Palace mode. That was a neat addition as well. Long story short, I love the hell out of this game's combat. They expanded it a million times over compared to 1 and 2. See, this is how you follow up to a series, not 2. And I can't thank Hideki Itsuno and everyone who worked on this game, because my god, they made something indeed special with this game. After saying all the good aspects about this game, where would Devil May Cry be without this game reviving the series? Devil May Cry 3 was the first DMC I really got into, and it just made me a fan immediately with the series, with how awesome just everything is in the game. Hideki Itsuno really showed Capcom and pretty much everybody how to resurrect a series when it was dead in the dirt from Devil May Cry 2, and mad props for that, I mean honestly. And all in all, pretty much what I'm saying is that he didn't need to go this hard, but I'm glad the boy did. He turned Devil May Cry into honestly one of the best hack and slash series I've ever played, so hats off to Itsuno. Hey to anyone that made it this far into the video. Just wanted to say, like many times before, thank you. Can't stress that enough. Next video I make in this format will be Devil May Cry or Resident Evil related, so I look forward to bringing you guys more content, and thanks so much for the support over the past 2 years. Love you guys with all my heart. Take care of yourselves and have a fantastic day. See you guys.